Hi everyone, and welcome to the UK's only TV show on mental health and well-being, and I'm your host, Chrissy B. Now, we regularly cover fitness on our show because we know how important it is for our mental health and well-being. And someone that knows this all too well is British former competitive diver Leon Taylor, who became a national champion and represented Great Britain at 3 Olympic Games. He'll be telling us about how sport drew him out of depression and why he thinks everybody should find their movement. Also on the show today, we have our resident psychologist, Dr Audrey Tang, for this week's Psychology Matters, and she'll be talking about movement more. We then have news with a positive twist with correspondent Helena Chard. Then we'll be moving on to some different subjects as we speak to our resident abuse prevention expert, Marilyn Hawes, about the massive impact a parent's words can have on their child. We'll then be speaking to Coach Chris Browne about what to do when you're in two minds whether to leave the job you're in and go for something different. Then off to the clinic we go. We have Dr Rob Hicks to answer your medical questions, and then nutritionist Hannah Richards will be explaining how to detox and also show us a recipe. So as you can see, we have lots to get through today, so let's start off with our real life story guest, Leon Taylor. Welcome to the show, Leon.
Thank you.
It's lovely to have you on. You've got an incredible story. But first of all, can you tell us about your childhood? What was that like growing up?
Oh goodness, well I have to refer to my parents if you want to know about my childhood, and to put it bluntly, I was a pain in the backside from the get-go. And
Okay.
yeah, my parents tell the story. For some reason, as soon as I was born, I wouldn't rest and I wouldn't sleep. So very quickly, my parents were extremely worn out with no idea what was wrong with me or what to do with me. And they struggled and struggled for ages and ages. And there's a great photo of them on their wedding day, and they look lovely and young and vibrant. And then I'm in the photo with them, 2 years later, and they look as though, they've aged 20 years.
Oh,
and that was down to me and my inability to rest or to sleep. So they took me to the family doctor eventually to see if there was anything wrong with me. And back then, I'm not sure what available labels there were back then, but I was labelled as a problem child. And my mum and dad were offered medical intervention so they could at least get some rest. And they decided, for whatever reason, that wasn't where the route they wanted to go down. And so they came up with a different strategy. They gave me to my uncles, my aunties, and my mum and dad's best friends so they could try and look after me. And that failed, so they tried to tire me out. And they soon realised that when I was involved in physical activity, I was easier to manage. I would sleep a bit more. And so that's when my life of activity started. And they certainly found that the physical movement was my medicine.
Brilliant. When did you actually get into the diving, and when did you discover
Yeah,
that talent?
so good question. So I didn't start diving until I was 9, but I started swimming before I was 1 year old. I was in nappies, learning to swim. I did mother and baby gymnastics from, as it sounds, like 8 months old. And I did every single sport that you could imagine. And my parents were just great. If Leon's engaged in it, then let him go. Judo, trampolining, rugby, football. I wasn't particularly good at a lot of them, but I really started to be drawn to the ones that I enjoyed the most. And eventually, when I had the chance to start diving, they were like, Leon, do you want to start? Yes.
So then I was in. Say yes to everything.
Yes to everything, right? Musical instruments, I tried everything, but then sport was the thing that I came alive with, and diving again was just another sport that I tried. But because of my gymnastics background and my love of the water, it became the sport that I enjoyed the most.
How did it feel diving? What was it like to?
Yeah, have you ever been off a diving board?
I tried.
Yeah, I mean, it's even,
it's scary. It's scary,
exactly.
But
so it's that funny kind of, it's adrenaline fueled. It's an incredible sensation, and you're always pushing your boundaries. So when you're starting diving, there's always a more complex dive for you to attempt, and then you can always make those changes, and it's trying to get it to be the best you can be in those circumstances. And when you're in an amazingly challenging environment like that, you really start to know, what makes you tick. And obviously there's expectation, there's pressure, and there's the fact I used to train when I was full-time, nearly 7 hours a day, 6 days a week, going after, those lofty goals. And of course, as we know, in life, no matter how much work you put in, the only guarantee is that there's no guarantees. And so the life of a sports person to any level is full of setbacks and and highs, but certainly lows. And it's it's not something that you take on lightly. But when you're young, I'm like, great, this is what I want to do. I don't want to sit down at school. I want to be out and being active.
And obviously, you know, you did compete in the Olympics. What was that whole experience like for you? Yeah,
so I watched the Olympic Games on the TV when I was 6, and I was so mesmerised, captivated. I told my dad then at 6 I wanted to go. And then at 18 I went to my first Olympic Games, and then again at 22, and then in 2004 alongside Peter Waterfield, my synchronised diving partner, we won British diving's first Olympic medal for 44 years.
Wow.
20 years after I watched it on the TV, so it was a 20-year dream to be part of. Amazing. And of course it didn't just go dream, achieve, you know, it was this incredible adventure, right? And you know, a lot of it you don't know, you know, what it means until you've actually kind of got through the other side, and you're able to reflect back on what you've learned, what you've experienced, and how hard it was. Yeah.
And then you did go through a very low period. Can you tell us about what happened? Because it all started to kind of take a bit of a dive.
Exactly. So I mean, high performance sport is it has a lot of pressure, a lot of expectation, a lot of that comes internally, and so in 2001, after my second Olympic Games, so in my second Olympic Games, Peter and I ended up finishing 4th, which was, you know, as close as you can get to achieving a dream of winning an Olympic medal, and it was heartbreaking, you know, to come so close. But then you kind of look and think, right, next 4 years, I'm going to challenge, you know, do everything I need to do to make it. But for me, it started to go the other way. So within a year of those Olympic Games, I had to undergo reconstructive shoulder surgery, which meant that I was actually given like a 30% chance of making it back to the level of fitness and diving that I was currently competing at. And so I had 6 months of painstaking rehabilitation. For the first 4 weeks of that, I was going to be in a sling 24 hours of the day, had to sleep with my hand pointing up in the air. It was 6 months of the toughest process to get back. And it really, really tested me. It was so challenging. And I got back in the pool, and I'm starting to do some low-level diving, but my shoulder isn't quite right. And so I go back to see the specialist again, who tells me that they're sorry, for some reason the surgery hasn't worked, and that I actually need another surgery. And that, Chrissy, is when things started to slip very, very quickly. Over the next period of 8 months during that fight back to fitness, I tried to make all of the changes I thought I needed to make, where I would stop seeing my friends and my family, and I'd focus on my nutrition, I'd focus on all these things, and I really squeezed the life out of my life, and I ended up in this negative spiral that, you know, looking back on it now, that I ended up in a period of depression. I'm very extroverted, and I wouldn't speak to anyone. I'd walk around all day with my shoulders hunched, no smile on my face. You know, I was disillusioned. Why was it happening to me? Life's not fair. And I didn't see any way out of it. And at the same time, I was kind of having these spurts of battling, you know, with this, you know, demon or whatever it was that I was really struggling with. And it got to the point where it turned for me, and it was the point where I'd given up, interestingly enough. I stood on the poolside, I was in Spain, I'd competed for Great Britain. I just made it back on the team, but I was way off the mark where I needed to be. And I stood on the poolside, tears rolling down my face. And it was at that moment when I decided that was enough. I'd done everything I could, that a mentor came over to me at that time, and just by way of asking me a question, managed to turn everything around. He put his hand on my shoulder and said, "Leon, why do you do this sport?" And I went, "Because I enjoy it." And you know, it seems ludicrous now telling this story, and then he said, "Well, why haven't I seen you smile for 8 months?" And that was it. I realised the reason I chose the sport in the first place when I was 9 years old is because I enjoyed it. And it was that thing that I'd lost completely, taking it too seriously. And that was my inflection point. And slowly I got back, and quite quickly when I started smiling, I changed my physiology.
It's amazing how one comment from someone can actually just kind of...
And that's the thing.
Light bulb moment.
Exactly. And then you know, the changes I made were physical to start with, like smiling, putting my chin up, and that obviously changes what happens biochemically in the brain. And then that negative spiral started to go the other way, and I started to climb out of that ditch that I was in. And before long, I was back up, and you know, the learnings I got from that period of time, I'll never ever forget. But for me, just to feel alive again and start focusing on the being present and in the present moment and enjoying what I was doing, and that was the thing. And then luckily for me, I managed to get back on track and then stand, you know, 2 years later on the podium. But you know, without going through that, you know, without that as an experience, you know, it's very difficult to understand what it's like. And now I have a deeper understanding and an awareness of where people can get stuck. And what you can do and how you can just, like you say, ask that question or just be there for someone and maybe guide their attention in a way that they maybe haven't paid attention to for. Mine was just like, it was just like, hey, what would happen if you did this, right? Smile. Charlie Chaplin says a day without laughter is a day wasted. And I didn't laugh for 8 months.
Wow.
What a shame.
Serious. What are you doing today then? How are you helping other people?
Yeah, so I find myself in various roles. I recently took to the TED stage and shared my story of the journey that I went on and trying to guide people with how they can manage their own mental wellness, what they can do day to day, mental health problems are, on the rise, and what can we do about it? What are the things that anyone can pay attention to? And physically moving more is something that's going to benefit everyone. I'm not saying that everyone should become elite athlete. In fact, I'm saying that don't become elite athletes. It's incredibly tough.
The other way.
But it's almost like, even just changing, like this, sitting here now in this position, just changes what happens, even taking a deeper breath changes what happens biochemically. And I find it fascinating. We spend a lot of our time stressed over laptops, poisoning our body with these, the chemical changes, when really if you just sat there and just took a few deep breaths or got up and went for a walk, it actually disrupts the pattern of stress. And stress is a global epidemic according to the World Health Organization. We really need to do something about that because it's not helping anyone, is it? The children, the adults, and then of course, the rest of the population, everyone's at risk.
Just one final question, or actually something that I'd like you to address the viewers now. If there's someone watching that says, maybe they've lost something, they think they've lost something in their life and they're like, oh, I miss that so much and I feel really down, I can't seem to go on without this thing or this person. What would you say to them?
Well, I'm often reminded, when we're looking back, as I often do in my diving career, I think, oh, I wish I was still diving and competing and such like. And then I always remember reading Dr. Seuss, who said, don't be sad because it's over, be happy that it happened. And that for me just brings me, into the present moment. I can look back fondly and then look forward and go, okay, so what have I got to look forward to now? And if I haven't got anything to look forward to, what can I create? What's the first step? And that first step needs to be with a smile on your face, because life is way too short. And if you're not smiling, then you're certainly missing out. So, whatever the challenge is, the only guarantee is that there's no guarantees, but go out there and every journey starts with that one step. So just take that one.
Brilliant. Leon, thank you so much. Great advice.
Yeah.
And all the best for the future and your talks. And I'm sure you're going to help loads more people.
I hope so. Thanks, Chrissy.
Thank you. Oh, everybody, don't go away, because after the break we have Psychology Matters with Dr. Audrey Tang, who'll be speaking more in depth about movement and also the news with correspondent Helena Chard in A Helping of Happy.
It's important that you get the message across, because a lot of people are scared to say what they're scared of, but they shouldn't really be, and they should just be confident in asking for help.
It's not scary to talk to someone about how you feel, and that everybody should try and talk to someone when they need help.
Welcome back to today's Chrissy B Show, everybody. So before the break, we heard Leon's story, who told us about how movement actually helped him with his mental health. And now we're going to speak to Dr. Audrey Tang in this week's Psychology Matters segment. Welcome to the show, Audrey.
Thanks for having me, Chrissy.
What did you think of Leon's story?
Very, very powerful, lovely story, and some key points that I've pulled out from there.
Yeah.
One of the biggest things that, of course, he's had to overcome, and this is a common thing for athletes who maybe suffer injury or have that life-changing thing, it was a complete life change.
Yeah.
And to go from, he was saying he couldn't succeed in the way he succeeded normally, to go from that to having to find new success criteria, to having to find a new way of doing things can be really hard.
Yeah.
When you just have an injury, I say just, I mean, say you injured your leg, you can still sometimes work your arms, but when it's something so life-changing, it can be very difficult. What's wonderful to hear is that he found something new for him. He found mentoring. He found giving back in a slightly different way before he then revisited his old career again.
Yeah.
And so that's really lovely. And another big thing is he had to get there in his own time. We can have so many people supporting us, around us, saying, it's okay, carry on, you're doing it. but you've got to reach that place yourself, and no one can force you there. And I think that's very powerful, and that's wonderful. So lovely story.
So can you tell us now about the psychology of movement? Is there such a thing?
Well, movement itself is very powerful because, of course, we all explore the world through movement. And another thing which it comes into mental health is, of course, our posture and how we sit, how we stand can affect things like our confidence, can betray our mental health feelings. So often coaches or clinicians are trained to recognise some of the symptoms of depression, which may also be very slumped over posture, purely because you're often trying to make yourself smaller and not take up much room. Then when you're talking about wanting to boost your confidence, then great posture is good because you take up more room, simply. Also, if we do engage in bad posture a lot of the time, we end up getting aches and pains. That's hard to go away. And then that can make us feel awful, depressed, anxious, and all of the other mental health problems that can come along with chronic pain. So it's important to make sure that we are sitting in alignment for our own bodies. Yeah. Another thing where psychology and movement becomes really important is we put our bodies through a lot. We ask them to stay up late to finish a presentation or an assignment. We might push them to their absolute limits when we're trying to get a new personal best. We might be asking it to do a new sport. And sometimes we forget how hard it works for us. And I think it's actually quite important to just show it a bit of gratitude. I know that's really strange, but I just wanted to give a little tip that I like doing now. I like gratitude. I think it's a very powerful feeling. Just the gratitude stretch before you get up in the morning is to just stretch out your arms and think about one thing that you're grateful for in terms of your body. You know, what has it done for you? And that's brilliant because when someone has body dysmorphia, we use thanking our body because we recognise how hard it works for us and we recognise its form, its function. So thank your body for doing something for you. And then when you stretch your legs out as well, and all of this helps your posture, all this helps alignment, think about one thing you're looking forward to doing today because your body's going to get you there.
Brilliant. Excellent advice. Thank you, Audrey.
Pleasure.
And we'll see you again next time.
Yes.
Thank you. All right, everybody. So now it's time to go to a helping of happy with the lovely Helena Chard. Welcome to the show, Helena.
Thank you, Chrissy.
We are ready for some positive news.
Yes. So I'm actually going to start off with it's quite an iconic story in a way about Gillian Lynn. Now it's an old story, but it was sort of made a case in point. Dr. Ken Robinson talks about this certain lady in his TED talk to do with creativity and various things. But this was actually in the 1930s, believe it or not, but I'm talking about her as well because she's passed away not so long ago. Inspiring lady. She was thought to have had a learning disorder, and they wanted to move her to a special needs school. Hyperactivity, I mean, it really now you would say hyperactivity disorder, but her mum took her to the doctors, really worried, dressed her up really beautifully, and the psychologist assessed her and took the mum out and just watched her, put on some music, and they watched her from the corridor, and she just danced beautifully and was so passionate and really, really glowing and happy. And he actually said, you know, Mrs. Lynn, Gillian isn't sick, she's a dancer, take her to dance school. And that's exactly what she did. And basically she went to join the Royal Ballet Company, and then she became a soloist performing all over the world. So I think it was ballet school to begin with, then ballet company. Then she formed her own musical theatre company and produced loads of successful shows, London, New York. Teamed up with Andrew Lloyd Webber, and basically a lot of them, you know, Phantom of the Opera, name a few cats, she helped produce. Oh wow. And it just goes to show that she wasn't a problem child at all. She was a talented child, and that was in the 30s, and it's a real, you know, I just think still today, because she's so amazing. I mean, the most accomplished choreographers of our time, I would say. Wow. So I thought I'd talk about her, which was very sweet. And moving on to also keeping it sort of a ballet theme, Paul Bays-Kitcher. Now he, in fact, he was a former ballet star, and he was going to have a future career with the Birmingham Royal Ballet. Unfortunately, he 20 years ago quit performing due to addiction. So he was doing really well, so battling drugs and alcohol, which actually spiralled out of control and was killing him. He was actually dying, that was how bad it was. But he went into rehab. He's been clean for 12 years, and now he runs workshops and classes teaching dance and movement to, again, recovering addicts. Okay. And there's a lovely piece, nice. And there's a lady called Jo who's saying that she's been off of drugs for 6 months and how she's now not scared of the future. And she talks about how lovely it is when she dances, how she feels. So it's lovely that his passion he's taking on and giving it to other people. So that's a really lovely story, that I like. Something that I can relate to, Rebecca Schiller, she moved to a farm. She originally was in Kent, just in a semi-detached little house, family, children, stressed, job work, not a very good work-life balance. And they went to an outside trip to North Wales, I think, and she couldn't believe how idyllic it was. It was quiet, she could think, and the children loved it. They were playing outside. That was the main reason why they moved. And it's a story about how she realises she actually has depression, and it's really helped her. Her family helped her. It's just, she had like a subconscious, that's the funny thing, a subconscious desire for balance. So moving to the country before she realised she was depressed. But now she's with her sheep and all her all the animals that need her. She's walking around outside, and that's like her way of movement and feeling good. And for the whole family as well, so she's doing incredibly good. It is, and actually I saw a report, a Lego report, it's a play wall report. 96% of children love playing with their parents. 38% of parents say they should play with their children more, and mainly because it keeps them mentally well. So, I mean, the whole thing is to get out and play, because obviously it mentally keeps you well, and it's a really good bonding session for families.
Movement, bonding session, that's what we need.
Yeah, I know.
Thank you, Helena, my love. We've run out of time
Thank you very
today,
much. I know.
but we'll see you again next week.
We look forward to it, as always.
Lovely. All right, everybody, so after the break, I'll be speaking to our resident abuse prevention expert, Marilyn Hawes, about the massive impact a parent's words can have on their child. And we also have on Coach Chris Browne on what to do when you're in two minds whether to leave the job you're in and go for something different. Hi, I'm Chrissy B, host of the UK's only TV programme dedicated to mental health and well-being, The Chrissy B Show, which airs on MyTV Sky 191 every Monday, Wednesday and Friday. Follow our social media on YouTube, Instagram and Twitter at Chrissy B Show, and our Facebook page, The Chrissy B Show. For more information, visit chrissybshow.tv. Welcome back to today's programme, everybody. So now we have on our resident expert, Marilyn Hawes, and she's going to be telling us all about the impact of verbal abuse on children. Welcome to the show, Marilyn.
Thank you for having me again.
Brilliant to have you back. So we always give brilliant advice and really open our eyes to certain things going on. Now tell us first of all what constitutes verbal abuse.
The shouting at children when it's unnecessary because you're the one with the stress. You know, I always think if you've got to shout, you've lost your stripes already. Yeah. You know, you've lost it already. And I used to say that when I was teaching, and I used to hear quite a lot of, fun enough, primary school teachers more than secondary ones, because secondary school teachers are dealing with teenagers who might just tell you to go somewhere. But I still, and sadly, because I do still do a lot of work in schools, I sadly sometimes do hear, rather than gently correct a child and ask them what's wrong, just humiliate them or shout them down. And as I say, you've lost the battle if you're going to go down that route. And it actually hurts me inside. I really feel for that little person. You could almost feel them shrinking.
What are the effects like when it's extreme?
Oh, it low esteem, that toxic shame. Can't you do anything right? You know, what do you think you're doing now? All that, and swearing at children. You know, some years ago we brought in a law about smacking children, which I totally agree with. You know, a child smacks somebody and then you go, don't smack, you know. But I lived in a part of Hertfordshire in a very modern urban town where you would hear constantly parents swearing at their children out in the street. And one day I went a short distance. It was only a few hundred yards, and I must have counted 48 times when I heard a parent use the F word on their child. And you think, well, if you're doing that in public, what are you doing in private? And of course, a lot of verbal abuse and swearing is linked to domestic abuse. So my mind starts then thinking, well, if that's how you're behaving outside, I wouldn't mind betting a lot of domestic abuse happens behind the walls, in which case the trauma that's causing a child, it's just horrible. They're little people. I mean, I don't like being shouted at.
No one does.
And the thing I say to people now, engage your brain before your mouth.
Definitely. Are the effects different for girls and boys, would you say?
With boys, funnily enough, if the mother, because of the research and the work I've done with child abusers, the impact of a dominant mother and a mother that's not validating a boy as being a coming up young man and not letting him feel his masculinity and treating him with that respect as a young man, that can heavily impact some boys, and they will end up abusers, even paedophiles.
Really?
There is a link between that abuse. Mothers have a huge role to play in how they bring up their boys in that remit, but of course other things come into play as well. But it is one of the factors that is there.
Yeah, and I suppose generally as well, boys maybe tend to keep it in more when they won't talk about things as much as the girls.
And you know, I think parents sometimes think that they can take it because they're boys. I think some of that still continues, and I think boys, well, I had 3 boys and a girl, and I think they were far more sensitive than my daughter was. Well, she was made of steel. So I just think it was quite interesting actually as well. I read a survey just before Christmas by the Anti-Bullying Alliance, and of course verbal abuse is also bullying, isn't it? Because if I shout you down, I'm pushing you back, I'm therefore bullying you. So it's a double whammer really. And then if there's domestic abuse as well, then it's a triple whammer. But it was interesting, these children had said, which surprised me, that just over 1,000 children in the last 6 months of last year, 49% said they had had face-to-face bullying and shouting. 37% was online, but 97% of those children commented on the failure of adults to set an example in how they respect and speak to each other.
Oh wow! You see, always watching the kids.
You see, and you.
Set the example.
Well, I dare I mention Brexit? I mean, goodness me. But you have to only listen to the atrocious behaviours in Parliament of grown-up, you know, so-called grown-ups. You don't see behaviour like that in the playground, you know. And I just find it appalling and a shocking example to our young people. I find it, in fact, embarrassing when the rest of the world are watching us, you know, kick off like that. I think it's shocking.
It's embarrassing.
But it is embarrassing. And this, when I was brought up, I mean, you know, my mother always used to say to me, sticks and stones will break your bones and names will never hurt you. They crush you.
Tell us about your experience with your mum, actually, because she
my
my
mother was, which I didn't realise for some time, my counsellor called her a black narcissus, and I thought, what's one of them? And then I read up about it, and the difficulties that a lot of daughters have with their mums, a narcissistic thing. And I used to think about my mum, you know, if I didn't know better, I'd say she was jealous of me. And she had that tone in her voice. So she'd smile and say, oh, you know, you've got lovely eyes. Shame that you wear makeup. You've got lovely friends. Shame, I don't like them.
Oh dear.
And that build up, take it away, build up, take it away. It so strongly impacts you.
Yeah.
And I never felt good enough. And that's the impact of that. You know, the way you say something. For example, I could say, the bus is coming. I can say, the bus is coming. I can say, the bus is coming. Same phrase. But the intonation, the tonal quality makes a massive difference to what you're actually conveying. You know, and people have got to think what comes at. And children that have a lot of verbal abuse and swearing on a consistent, extreme basis, that impact on them is actually emotionally worse than them coming out of a war zone.
Wow.
You know, you don't see those bruises. You don't see what's gone on. And it took me a long time to feel validated or confident in any way. In fact, it's only 2 or 3 years ago that I discovered this from my therapist, and I actually, without blagging it, like pretending I'm a person I'm not, I now understand that my mother was narcissistic and really quite cruel, you know, and it is cruel. It is very cruel.
It is, yeah.
And a lot of women I speak to, and that is all part of an emotional abuse, really. So it's the verbal, they all link in together. They do all merge, but I cringe when I just think that we had this smacking law, but I really would love to start a campaign on the way we speak to children. And as I say, and in school. I always say to everybody, one of the 3 things I have on my mantra when I'm teaching is ask why a child is behaving like they are. What is it that's making them kick off, be very antisocial, be very regressed, all these negative behaviours? Where does it come from? Because it comes from somewhere. Yeah. And then always be the child. Okay. How would you feel you're a metre high and someone's bellowing at you? Who should know better? It's bad.
Food for thought as usual. Marilyn, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
And we'll see you again next time for another topic.
Thank you.
All right, everybody, so now it's time to head over to Coach Chris Browne, and he's going to be telling us what we can do and what tips to apply when trying to make a difficult decision regarding work.
Hi, I'm Coach Chris Browne, and today I'd like to talk to you about making job decisions. Now, this isn't easy, but I've come across a situation where somebody explained to me about a lady who left her job because she wasn't happy where she was, went to another company. They promised her that they will offer a lot of work because it was sort of like 0 hours, but she worked out that it'll pay a lot better. She jumped into this job. A little time later on, they weren't supplying the work that she needed. Now she has her mortgage, she's got children, she's a single parent, and there's a lot of outgoings going on, but she cannot afford to pay to meet her bills. So what did she do? She went back to her company and asked them for a job. They said she'd have to reapply for the job. Now, obviously, she didn't really, let's say, think about making the decision. This was based on an emotion or a situation that happened in the company, and she jumped. But what I'm going to show you today is how you could and should make a job decision. Number 1 on here, know the main goal of your job decision. When I say that, it is a fact that if you work out, sit down with a piece of paper and work out your goal, the main reason why you are going to move into another job. Why you're going to do this, you've got to work out and think about this, because once you realize your goal, whatever obstacles come in the way, you will carry on through because you've got a reason to do this and you won't just jump for jumping. Number 2, gather all information. Gather all information about why you are leaving and the pros and the cons. Because when you've really worked it out, you might not have to leave that other job. It just might be a situation. It might have to do with your boss or the way things are done, or it might have to do with you. Communication makes all the difference. Talk about it, work it out. Because you might find in gathering all the information and the facts behind this, that yes, maybe it would be better leaving because maybe it's a career plan, or if it's an issue within the company, then you can work this one out. Number 3, don't make decisions out of fear. Why we say that, don't make decisions out of fear, is because sometimes we make a decision out of fear because we fear of the outcome. We automatically think of the negatives, what might happen, and we think, it's time to jump. It might not be, because if we thought about the consequence of if something good could happen out of this, chances are you make the right decision. But if you make a decision out of fear, it won't be the right decision, because fear is an emotion and fear goes up and down. We make that decision, we run, we go, it is fear. And then after, when it's all settled and the dust is gone, we realize, was that the right decision? Number 4, once you've made a decision, stick to it. The reason why we say that is you've actually gone through all the steps and you've come to a final decision. Now that you've come to that final decision, the worst thing you could do is to start going back over it and thinking, should I make this move or should I not? So, once you've made a decision, stick to it. It's the right decision.
Thank you very much to Coach Chris Browne there. Well, after the break, we have on Dr. Rob Hicks answering your medical questions, including this one. Every time I eat a bit too much sugar, I get red spots and blotches all over my face and neck. What can I do? And we also have our nutritionist Hannah Richards with another recipe. The first thing that I had to do was talk to someone. And I know sometimes talking to someone about what you're thinking, what you're feeling can be a bit scary, because you might think to yourself, what I'm thinking is not nice. How can I say this to someone? But look, that's the first step for you to be really happy. Welcome back to today's Chrissy B Show, everybody. And now it's that time you've all been waiting for. It's Doctor's Answers with Dr. Rob Hicks. Hi, Rob.
I'm stunned. We're waiting for.
This is, you know what, even if the questions don't, even apply to some viewers, I still like to hear the answers. I used to listen to you on LBC all the time, and even when it didn't have anything to do with me or any problem, but it was just interesting to listen to.
Well, I think health is interesting.
Yeah, it was a whole hour.
We ought to make health more interesting and less doom and gloom, quite honestly.
Yes, it's true. Yeah. Okay, so you're ready for some questions?
I am indeed.
Right.
Yes.
So, first question. Every time I eat a bit too much sugar, I get red spots and blotches all over my face and neck. I do have a sweet tooth and have tried cutting back on the treats, but then I end up with headaches. Is there anything that can be done medically to stop the spots and blotches?
Now, that's a fascinating question, because in essence, from the point of view of the spots and the blotches, this viewer has solved the problem. They've identified that too much sugar brings them out in a rash, essentially.
Well, then they get headaches.
But then they get the headaches. So there's a couple of things to think about with this. What I would suggest, obviously, if you can cut back the sugar, it's going to be good for your health all round. And certainly from a point of view of the spots and the rash. It's not common for this to happen in response to too much sugar. So I just wonder whether actually there's a reverse process going on, is that maybe you develop the spots, the early parts of the spots, you then feel a bit miserable about that, and therefore you reach for the sugar, so you automatically make that assumption that it's the sugar causing the problem. But with regards to the headaches, I think this is a reason why you ought to have a checkup with your doctor. And actually, if the spots are around, or if you take a picture of the spots, you can show your doctor the spots as well. In case it's a separate issue, it might be acne that you've got, and you need some medical treatment for those spots. Cause of headaches? Well, hunger is a really very common cause, and is it that actually you're reaching then for the sugary foods to actually satisfy your hunger, and that's what's causing a part of the problem? Is it that actually you're stressed and you're comfort eating with the sugary foods, and that's so when you take away that comfort eating, those sugary foods, you get a headache related to stress. Anxiety and depression, one of the symptoms is headaches as well. So again, it's comfort eating. Could that be the problem? So if it is stress, try to think about relaxation therapy instead of the sugary treats. If it's anxiety and depression, talk to the doctor about whether counselling or antidepressants might be a good approach. If it's hunger, think about having fruit instead of the sugary snack. Actually, headaches are often caused by dehydration, so maybe think about drinking more liquid during the day. So I think there's a number of things you can do. Try and keep a symptom diary to see if there's any other triggers, but I would get this checked out sooner rather than later, quite honestly.
Good advice, Rob. Thank you. Next question. I'm in my 40s and one of my resolutions is to exercise more. I've recently started going to the gym, and after a session involving free weights and machines, I noticed a pain in my forearm where the arm bends. It doesn't feel like a muscular pain and it's constant. Have I damaged something? Oh, it's only just started.
It sounds like there might be an injury there, and this sounds like what we call over-enthusiastic syndrome. Get stuck in there, try and do too much too quickly. You don't want to curb the enthusiasm, but you want to do it safely.
Yeah.
I think, you mentioned about where the forearm bends. I mean, are you talking about the elbow, or are you talking about the wrist? Is the first question that comes to mind. Are you able to use the arm, or is it too painful for you to use it? Are you getting other symptoms? These are sort of things that when you go and have this checked with your doctor is going to ask you these questions, so be prepared. So is it swollen? Is it red? Is it hot to the touch? Are you getting weakness in that arm? Are you feeling symptoms like numbness and tingling, pins and needles? Those sorts of things. What it sounds like to me is actually you've suffered a muscular strain or a ligament sprain. You've actually overdone it and you've damaged something. The other thing it could be is something called tennis elbow, particularly if the pain is around the elbow on the outside. If it's on the inside of the elbow, then that would be golfer's elbow. And both of these injuries are caused by minor tears and inflammation of the muscles and the tendons, usually down to sudden sort of enthusiastic exercise, which is too much for that particular part of the body. It's unlikely, but it depends on your symptoms. If you can't use this limb at all, and it's very swollen, you may have fractured some way. So you may have fractured the wrist. Wow. So I think it's important for you to get this checked out. And in the meantime, think about how you manage the symptoms. Well, you've got the RICE treatment, which is rest, icing, compression with a bandage and elevating the arm, painkillers. And I think the other thing to think about is when you do go back to the gym, have a chat with the gym instructor to make sure that you're using the equipment appropriately and safely, because that will reduce your risk of injuries, and ask them maybe for an exercise program specifically to suit your needs. And never forget to warm up before you start exercising.
Yes, Rob, thank you so much. That's it for today.
My pleasure.
See you again next time.
Yes, indeed.
And everybody, if you have a question for Rob, just email us on doctor@chrissybshow.tv. Well, now it's time to head over to Hannah Richards for some nutrition advice and a recipe. Welcome to the show, Hannah.
Hi, Chrissy, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Before we get stuck into whatever you're making today, tell us a few tips about how to detox.
Detox. Well, it's a great time of year to detox. It's probably worth saying that our bodies naturally detox all the time. I would take out all the foods that are processed or wrapped in plastic and replace them for things that grow on trees or from the soil. So lots of fruit and vegetable. If there's something green on your plate, you're doing a good job.
Okay.
Yeah.
Simple.
It's simple.
Brilliant. That's how you detox. Wonderful. Okay, so what are you going to be making for us
so
today?
we're going to make some almond milk.
Okay.
And it's really quick, simple and easy, and it's really cheap because there's loads of nut milks on the market these days.
And they cost a fortune.
And they cost a fortune. And I think they just get thrown out because we don't use them up. Because we can't... Back in the day, we had glass milk bottles, didn't we? And you could see how much milk was left. Yeah. So choose your... desired nut. These are almonds, and you just soak them overnight. So these have been soaking, and they're just soaking in water. Just make sure the water level goes over the amount of nuts you've got in there. Okay. And then all we're going to do is blend them. So you just hold that for me, Chrissy, just so I don't splash.
Almonds are good for what?
So almonds are really high in vitamin E, and vitamin E is really good for the skin.
Okay.
Plus, all nuts have got, you know, a good amount of protein and fat in as well. So if you wanted to try and get away from cow's milk because of the lactose or it's giving you digestive issues, you can always try a nut milk.
Okay.
Coconut milk's a really good one, although we can't really get coconuts in this country. But you could
Not
do
decent ones anyway.
Not decent ones. But you could use cashew nuts, any nuts.
Okay.
And you can.
And it's just important to say these are unsalted nuts.
And these are unsalted, yeah. Okay. So, fingers in your ears. Ooh. There we go. So you can see that it's really easy for the almonds to break down. Yeah. But what you might need to do during it is just add a little bit more water.
It's quite thick, isn't it?
Yeah, because it's quite thick. So just use, just keep topping it up with water because you want a nice liquid. The consistency wants to be obviously that of milk. So
I suppose if you like the kind of thicker milk as well, you could
absolutely
just do it to your taste, couldn't you?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Okie dokie. So we'll just put those nuts in there. And now you can see it's a much more milk-like consistency, which is exactly what we want. So then all you need to do next is, ta-da, take a sieve. Now you can get nut bags, which are a bit expensive, and every household probably has a sieve.
Oh yeah.
So all you're going to do is start pouring the milk through the sieve into the bowl, and it catches all the sort of the raw nut that hasn't blended. And there you've got a beautiful almond milk.
Look, it's nice and creamy and
thick, natural, no preservatives, no chemicals, no nasties, no thickeners, which is all these things are the things that we find in our nut milks. And if you just wanted to make milk for your tea in the morning or your coffee, you would just take a handful of nuts, soak them overnight and do this process.
so easy.
A little bit more. There we go. And so I've bought lots of different ingredients to almost pimp our milk.
Okay. Let's pimp our milk.
For extra health benefits.
So let's do this.
So we can do that.
Okay.
So let me just give it a, so it doesn't shake. So all they need to do is just do it like that. And you get the last bits of milk out. Oh, it smells good, actually.
It smells lovely. It's like you can use that for something.
Yeah, you could.
Put it in your yogurt.
Put it in your yogurt. You could try it out. Cakes, absolutely, because it's just almond meal, right?
Yeah. See, look, you've got other ingredients there as well.
Yeah, it's like the juice pulp when you do cold press juicing. Perfect. Cool. Okay, so now we have. So now we're going to add a few bits and bobs. Now.
I'm ready with the glasses, but we've got a few
my
steps still, haven't we?
Exactly. So I'm just going to pour that in there. So what we're going to do is we're going to do one more little blend job. So pour your milk back into your blender.
You don't have to do this. It's just if you want to kind of
if you can keep it
a bit different.
Yeah, you can keep it completely clean. So these are vanilla pods, and we're just going to take about that much of vanilla pod and pop it in the milk. Now, what else do you fancy? We've got here some baobab powder, which is from the baobab fruit, and it's full of antioxidants, so it's really, really potent. It really helps your gut microbiome, really keeps your gut health really good. We've got some lucuma powder here, which is a really, again, it's a really good sort of superfood. And then we've got some maca powder, and maca powder is a good hormonal balancer, especially. Should we put some maca in it? Now, the key to maca powder, guys.
Don't use too much.
Don't use too much, because you can ruin whatever you're making in one fell swoop. Have you done that, Chrissy?
Yes, actually, I kind of tipped a bit too much in my yogurt once, and it was very overpowering.
Ruins it. You have to throw it all out.
It tastes lovely. It's got a beautiful flavour.
So I'm going to put that amount in.
Yeah. Very economical, isn't it?
Don't overdo it.
We run out of time, do you know?
Bit of salt, bit of sea salt, and last whiz in the whizzer.
Last whiz in the whizzer.
Okie dokie. You didn't put any. Okay, so let's give it a go.
This looks yummy.
Homemade almond milk.
And you can use it on your homemade granola.
Homemade granola.
Which I'd love to
make it for your hot chocolate. Put it in your tea or your coffee. Pimp it up as much as you like, and you've got a
Sorry, I didn't cheers.
A beautiful
Cheers.
source of protein and fat.
It's lovely.
Oh, really?
That is delicious. I'll just have that on its own without anything.
Just on its own, yeah.
Lovely. Thank you, Hannah, so much. This is
Pleasure.
beautiful. As usual.
I'll make you some more, and then you've got a pint of milk.
Yes, lovely. Thank you. All right, guys, so now it's time to go over to my thought of the day. And by the way, just before I go, or before Hannah goes, if you want more information about any of our resident guests, all you need to do is go to our website, chrissybshow.tv, scroll down, and you can get their information there. Thank you, and see you in a minute. Well, everyone, I hope that you've enjoyed today's program and found some useful tips. What I'd like to talk about today, though, is about the concept of movement. So we have covered that on today's program and, you know, basically told you why movement is good for you and everything like that. And I completely agree, movement is very good. We should all be moving, we should all be exercising because it does help our mental health. But as I have mentioned before, I was heavily into exercise and weight training when I was depressed because it did make me feel better while I was in the gym, while I was, you know, with the, you know, my friends there. I really used to enjoy it. It was a challenge for me. I got very strong to the point where I was even considered to compete professionally for weight training because of the strength that I had. But people didn't realize that the physical strength that I had was just a reflection of the emotional pain that I was going through. And while I really do encourage everybody to exercise and get moving, but I don't think it's a solution for depression. Because the thing is, you can't be exercising all day, every day, 24 hours a day, can you? What happens when you leave the gym? When I used to leave the gym, I'll be all right for a little while, go home, and then I'd be having those feelings, that heaviness again. So yes, exercise is good, but it can't be your escape. Because what if you can't train one day? Like I said, you can't be there the whole time. So you really need to get to the root of the depression and deal with it. I found the solution. I beat depression completely. It hasn't come back. It's been over 21 years that I've not been depressed, that I've not had a panic attack. So it's completely possible. And if you'd like information about that and what I did to overcome depression, you can visit my website, which is mylifeafterdepression.com. So what I'd like to just say is deal with the root of your depression, and then you use exercise and you use movement to enhance your life. I still exercise today. I still do weight training. Actually, I'm going today after I finish recording here. I'm going to go to the gym, but it's for me. It's not like an escape. It's not something that I have to do, or else I'm going to feel really bad. Actually, I'm having to push myself to go because I don't really feel like going. I'm pushing myself to go, but I'm doing it today because I know it's good for my health. It's good for me in general. That's why I'm doing it today, not as an escape route. All right, everybody, so we have reached the end of today's program, but if you have a story that you would like to share, please do get in touch with us by emailing info@chrissybshow.tv. You can also tweet or Instagram us @chrissybshow or leave a message on our Facebook page, The Chrissy B Show.